Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Well, we have one set of labs, so why don't we go through the labs first, and then we can open up some discussion topics. I have a bunch of things I could talk about, but we can also just go around and see what you guys are interested in talking about. So let's grab Alexandra first. Alexandra, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Howdy.
Hey, I presented this person over a year ago, and I repeated her Nutrarel again this early spring or late winter. And it's not CEO, she's a CFO in,
Yes.
and she's just resigning, and she'll stop in June. She's so excited. Yeah, because they sold themselves to somebody else, and she had to help the merger and all that, and so many stressful things. So she has lots of complaints, and she came to me when she had seen a really like nationally known naturopath here in our. I don't know that you know her, and she started her on cortisol, and then you mentioned a book that you know about how to use cortisol, but how cortisol doesn't change the HPA axis, and she had no success on it for months. And so on her, when I put her on the stage 3 adrenal, she started having success. She went from being disabled and not being able to work as a CFO and taking time off to going back part time, which doesn't really exist, to doing 70, 100 work hours. Um, but
Wait. So let's rewind. Let's rewind there. So she was already on, well, she tried to take the cortisol, straight up cortisol. And what was the effect of that?
nothing, no effect.
Yeah. Is that the coolest thing? So, like, why do you think that doesn't make any sense when you think about it? It would make sense that she would have low cortisol and take cortisol and get better,
Yeah.
wouldn't it? I mean, wouldn't that make some sense?
We didn't talk about that when I presented her at first. Yeah, but maybe I was supposed to read that book that you mentioned. It would make
No,
sense.
no, yeah, well, the reason this is the whole thing that Dr. Timmons figured out is that it doesn't work. You know, everybody, all the naturopath, he was a naturopath, right? All the naturopaths thought that's what everyone was doing, 70s and 80s. It just made sense. Thyroid is low, you give thyroid. That works, right? Kind of. And then, cortisol is low, you give cortisol. So the, however, there's a kind of a big however on this, right? Is that the resetting of the HPA axis using these low dosages kind of has its role. Like it worked for this person really well, right? It works really well for people who have that, stress-induced adrenal problem.
Hmm.
But you can use, especially DHEA, in other ways. I don't think cortisol works very well in other ways, but DHEA does. So you can use DHEA for what this resetting of HPA axis pathways. That's the ultra low dosages with the drops. But then you can just use DHEA separately if you just want to get the levels of DHEA up, or if you want to get DHEA to start to convert into other hormones, like for menopausal women, it would be estrogen typically, and then for men that are over the age of 50, it would be for testosterone boosting. But when you use DHEA in that way, it's typically used at like 25 to 50 milligrams all at one time, all on one dose. Just
Well,
to mention it, just to mention that, because the way that I teach this stuff, it's this really kind of specific use of DHEA and pregnenolone just for this one really niche specific purpose. But then they can be used for other reasons successfully.
thank you for clarifying that. That was
Yeah.
good for me to.
But that's pretty cool. Okay, anyways, it's pretty cool that you can see like in real time that cortisol by itself doesn't necessarily work in terms of people who are chronically stressed.
Yeah, it was a good lesson.
Yeah, it's
And
cool. That's pretty cool.
that even though you're a 70-year-old naturopath that has a really good career, there's still things to learn and refine. And so I was lucky to have this class to learn. Well, she told me because she was on the stage 3 adrenal for over a year because the financial crisis and the Silicon banks happened, and then her whole company's payroll was on that, and it was just like one thing after another. And we kept trying to wean her off, and I think I just weaned her off to the drops, and she kept on the Ultra Pack and vitamin C. And what's and she told me that she's still having brain fog. It's not as bad, obviously. She went back to work and was able to function, but she's just not back to where she used to be over a year ago. And then she was also getting hit with what she was saying was premenopausal symptoms, and she was on the lowest dose of estradiol patch started by someone else. I added progesterone, saying, no, you need to be balanced. Your gynecologist is not doing it the best way, I think. And she's still having breakthrough and worsening hot flashes now. And she was having rage and irritability. She's having back spasms, but she has back spasms ever since she delivered her kid, which is probably like over 10 years ago. I forgot what else her list of complaints were. So I told her, okay, you could try maybe go back on the adrenal program, or let's increase your estradiol. And increasing her estradiol seemed to work. And she's gonna quit work. So, it's around the corner now. So I told her, hold tight, keep taking your detox, the NAC and glycine and vitamin C. You still could use CoQ10 because your lipid peroxidase is still up. So I was wondering if there's anything else besides, and still take your amino acids. And she wanted to be on curcumin. The only change was she went, is this the new one? Her
This is
omega
the new one. Yeah.
went from a 4 to a 3. Otherwise, everything else stayed basically the same according to this chart. But when you look at it, her carbohydrate and lipid metabolisms did seem to improve. I did the circles again of how they used to be, but her electron transport change stayed the same. And then her dysbiosis markers are still, I didn't add a circle if it was really super close or exactly the same.
The big dots, just to clarify for everyone, the little dots are the new test. The big dots are the original test, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And 12 months have passed between the two, and she's been on stage 3 adrenal and on detox.
So what the interesting part of retesting people is, I think, what you did between the two tests and then what they did with that. you know, how did their body respond to whatever nutrients you were giving or whatever lifestyle changes you were making? And then looking at the retest it's not really like you're trying to get people better, on the testing itself. You're just trying to see what happened.
Yeah, no,
You know what I mean? So and that's the interesting part of it. So that how did her body take in these nutrients and exercise programs and meditation programs, whatever else you gave, and then how did that get morphed in her physiology to come out with this second test? Does that make sense? So because when I was first doing these labs, I really was under the impression that every marker should just get better. But that's not really, I think, the purpose of retesting. The purpose of retesting is to see what's happening.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps at all, but it's a different goal. It's like, okay, well, what can we learn here about this person? Because the goal is ultimately to get the test to be perfect. But we had, in order to do that, you're talking about, for my calculations, you're talking about like 30,000, really good meals in a row. It's like a decade or two of healthy eating. It takes a while to get all these lab markers back. So that's kind of not the short-term goal in the first year or two. That's like the bigger picture goal for their life, So anyways, we just want to see. So what do you make of how things moved around in terms of, and then she was under pressure during this year between the tests too, right? Her stress didn't end yet, correct?
She was on survival mode.
Okay, so that's another factor too. Is like, okay, well, what happens? Can you improve these lab markers in someone who's desperately running from fire to fire at work? And then she has an exit now. She's cashing out and going to retire basically.
She's taking a year or more off to be with her teenage kids, and then she'll not ever do a high pressure job again. But she'll see. Right. She have to want to work to be fulfilled, but she'll be here to figure that out. She's financially, yeah.
So, but what things got better then? What are the top 3 things that actually improved during the year? Then we take away all the increased stress variable and all that stuff. Her brain fog got better, but it's still there.
Yes. And then she's having worsening perimenopausal type symptoms.
Hormones are worse. Brain fog is better.
And then she has back spasms. I think that was the other thing, the main thing she was focusing on, because she's had to travel a lot, and so her back really bothers her. And she's done chiropractor and, you know, PT. She's done everything for that. So I think I was pushing her towards Alexander technique.
Oh, good. That's a great thing.
Yeah. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh, I'm hiding it from myself. No wonder. Oh, night sweats were worsening, irritability, rage. Yeah, that's it. But before her, I guess her working memory did improve, but the brain fog is affecting that still. She's not as weepy. Her marriage, when she started feeling better, her marriage improved too.
That's awesome. Okay, so then what are the questions? What should we think about?
I was curious for the brain fog, like, can I find a reason here? Like, is it worthwhile to keep supporting her NAC and glycine? I don't know that I ever ramped it up and gave her a glutathione spray, so maybe I would do that to really turbo boost her detox. I was thinking maybe revisiting her gut. Maybe does she have some ammonia from bacteria that are causing the brain fog? I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's like an alcoholic who's still drinking, really. You can't really tell, you know?
Ah,
So like when I used to work, I worked for a long time with Lynn Elliott Harding
yeah.
for like 5 years. We worked really close together. She's a drug and alcohol counselor, and she's the one that got me onto this. So she would say, "Look, Dan, Susie came in, you know, because we shared all these patients for all these years. Susie came in at 9 this morning, and she was drunk to her, you know, therapy session because Lynn's a counselor." And she's like, I sent her home. I said, okay, today is not a good day. Tomorrow's not a day. Go to your meeting, you know, tonight or tomorrow, whatever. But the point was that she didn't want to engage in an emotionally intense therapeutic conversation with someone who was actually actively drunk, just sitting there for an hour. It would have been a total waste of everybody's time because when you're drunk, you don't have, you know, accurate perception of your emotions and feelings, and you know, this doesn't work. So you think about this woman's kind of like drunk on stress, you know, and so it's really hard for you to evaluate the brain fog when she's in this pretty intense situation. Silicon Bank failing took a lot of companies under, yeah. I mean, that was a big deal. I don't know if her company was one of the ones that had all their cash there, but some of these
Yep. Yeah.
companies, some was it because that was like, you know, death knell. That was as bad as it could get for a business because all of a sudden your bank disappeared. And if you had all your resources in that bank, there was a question as to what was going to happen because most of those companies didn't have insurance on the cash, right? They had tens of millions of dollars in cash and it was just gone.
Then also her mom died in 2018, I saw, and that was when her company was initially bought out. Her boss left, um, and then her dad's health was falling apart. And then her middle schooler became transgendered and has ADHD. Yeah, there's just, you know, the whole thing hit the fan in the
Yeah,
past.
so I think in those kind of situations, it's like that, like she was drinking this whole kind of time, so that you don't have to really figure out the brain fog,
She
you
was
know, because you're not going to be able to make sense of this until she's probably, you know, 6 months or a year away from all this nightmare, you know. But you can still follow the labs and do the supplement protocols, but you don't really have to um, worry about fixing things per se. And then I would say for for at least half of the people in this position that I've worked with, as soon as they're out of their high pressure job, or as soon as they're out of their, you know, really bad marriage, 99% of the stuff just disappears, you know, because it was all just emotional and spiritual stress, you know. And then you can kind of evaluate, but you can, so in other words, you're sort of supporting a system that's under this sort of self-generated mental crisis. And you can kind of see she didn't change that much, right? I mean, the labs didn't really change that much.
Oh.
So, but that's okay because we're just seeing, I mean the message there is, you know, you need to change what's going on here, but she's already doing that. But you can kind of, and I think when you do consultations with patients like this, it's more about saying, you know, we're doing all these supportive things for your body, but, you know, ultimately you're still in this sort of physiological crisis, and some of this is going to, you know, change when you can change your lifestyle. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here. But in the meantime, you can support with all the nutrients that she needs and all the gut programs that she needs. But you have a different goal, right? The goal is not really to get rid of the brain fog. It's just to get her to that point where she can leave the job and have that year or two of recovery time and really put things together. And then, does she exercise?
I think she is an exerciser, but hasn't been because I don't
Yeah,
think we even
exactly. Yeah.
talk about that.
So then the thing is that I had this lovely patient, Eduardo, and I worked with him, his wife, and their two daughters. And he was the youngest uh, senior executive level, top level person at Microsoft. And like, I mean, he was like 20 something or 30 something. Anyway, he's a really ambitious and very successful business guy. And he just worked constantly, like 80, 90, 100 hours a week. That's just what he did. And that was the only way that you could get to that level. And I worked with him while he was at Microsoft for, I can't remember now, at least 5 or 6 years. And it was just like this. It was like the same screwed up labs every year, you know? And because the wife was kind of pushing him to do this, and I really helped their two little girls, he was into it. He was not, he was doing everything, but there was this overarching, crushing stress on him. And so what I did do with him was a little bit of coaching, and we negotiated, over the course of a few months, like what were going to be the terms under which he was going to keep doing this job, because he didn't want to stop. He was making a lot of money. He was supporting his family. His wife ended up going back to law school and getting a law degree and having her own career. But at this point, she didn't have the law degree, so he was supporting a family and getting his wife through law school and all this kind of stuff. And then, so he wasn't going to just stop. That was clear. And plus, he hadn't really peaked to the level he wanted to yet in terms of his career. He had a goal that he wanted to get to, and so, but we did negotiate. Like we ended up, let me think, for Eduardo, it's different for different executives, but for Eduardo, it was every time that he took a business trip, because he traveled like 75, 80% of the time. He was head of international at Microsoft. And so every time he took a business trip, we created a set of rules for his assistants to set up where he had to have every single day that he traveled 12 hours with no meetings and nothing for him to do except sleep and exercise and eat healthy food. Because what had been happening on all these trips was he was, booked all day long for 10 hours straight in meetings, and then had to take his clients out in the evening for very expensive and fancy dinners where they all drank a lot of really expensive and fancy wine. And then he would get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep and then wake up and do it again. And so what ended up getting trashed in all this were the dinners. He stopped doing the dinners with clients, and he just made it all meetings, meetings, and meetings. So it was 12 hours a day of super hard work, 12 hours a day unscheduled. So that would be like from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. He had free every single day that he traveled. That really turned things around while he was working. And then we got him a personal trainer, and he was exercising 7 days a week, hard in a really good way. And he dialed in the food perfectly. So we got the food perfect, we got the exercise perfect, and we got the work trips, which was most of his life, down from 18 hours a day of work to 12. I mean, it's not
Awesome.
ideal, but it was a lot better. And he got really physically fit, started to get less stressed. And then the day that he quit Microsoft and he started his own consulting business, that just all of a sudden the yeast overgrowth was gone. What a miracle. You don't have your candida anymore for the first time, Eduardo, in like 6 years. And everything, the adrenals, everything just got better, like literally overnight when he quit the job. But I got him, there was many years where it was twice a year, like clockwork. He would do all his labs and we would have these discussions about how you're going to get through, this period of your life such that when this is over, you're not a complete wreck. So I think there's like discussions you can have with people when they're still in the throes of it. Like she still has some time, right? She's got months left, or I'm not sure how long. I can't remember.
Oh, days.
Oh, days of work. Okay. Okay. So if you're at the end of this, and this is more often, she's kind of young, she's 48, but this might even be a 65-year-old woman who, is selling her law firm, or, I've had tons of patients in that position. Usually they're a little older where they're going to stop work. And usually it means that they're getting a large sum of money also, which is good, because they can afford to pay you. And so the strategy there then is that you want to get, and these are always sort of by definition, Did I cut out there? Am I still there?
Oh, I hear you.
Oh, my computer made a weird sound. Okay, these people are by definition, overachievers and super hardworking, right? So you don't have to worry about that part. Um, but what you want to do is channel that inner drive that they have towards their health and fitness, so they have something else to obsess on. Otherwise, they get really depressed. Anyways, if they just are sitting around trying to play a better golf game or something, it's just usually not very satisfying. So then you want to sort of invoke in them the level of fitness training that you would see in an Olympic athlete. That's what you want. So we want the best exercise program that you could possibly have. You're going to hire a personal trainer. They're going to set all that up. We're going to dial your food in perfectly. If you don't want to do it, we can find you someone who's going to teach you how to do the food, and then get them on some kind of a entry level spiritual practice, whatever that's going to be for them. If the person has, a Christian background, they're Catholic or something, they can start to go back to church because they haven't been doing that in a while. If they don't have a particular religion, you can get them to do some kind of meditation practice or something that's going to get them, spiritually grounded and connected. And so you have this moment in time where you don't want them to you want them to sort of seize this moment and put all that energy that they put into their career, into their health for a little while. That keeps them,
Mhm.
heading in the right direction. And so, and then I guess at the same time, you need to work with them so that they don't become directionless with their life mission and work life too, you know, because usually these kinds of people are not satisfied with, just letting go of everything. So like in Eduardo's case, what did he do? He had a math degree. He ended up, I think he ended up doing something with his math degree. Yeah, he did. I remember this now. It was totally different. He ended up doing something with his math degree that was a job he kind of always wanted to do. And then he started a consulting firm, those two things. And so he kept himself busy, but not like in a bad way, more like in a 20-hour a week kind of way. And he had time for the girls and school and pick up and drop off and all that kind of stuff, you know. Um, and I think part of the job of functional medicine is to help people structure these kinds of programs in their lives, and I really enjoy that part. It's fun, and you just get into it's not counseling or therapy at all. It's more just like lifestyle coaching, but at a high level, especially with someone that has the budget to actually hire a trainer and kind of make all this stuff happen. And you become kind of the manager or director of those different people that are controlling the lifestyle part. You don't actually have to do all the work, right? But just kind of direct it and give them a program, really. That's like a year-long program along those lines.
Are you specific to the trainers and what to do, or they know it?
Depends. I have a real strong personal interest in exercise, but the trainers that I work with know like 1,000 times more than I do. So I can do like lightweight exercise recommendations, but I'm working with this guy now, Justin Roche, who's like he's done every professional sports team you could imagine and every Olympic athlete you ever heard of, and he's super high level guy. So we have him in my practice now, and I just send people to Justin. And he takes care of all of it.
Mhm.
Um, he's available if you need someone to use. He does, it's all on the phone. He's actually lives in Canada. He works on the phone all the time.
What was the name
Um,
of
if you want to use him, and it's fine. He has his own independent practice, really. I just refer people to him from my practice. Um, and then sometimes sometimes it's kind of surprising, and it may be something like where the first 3 months of your he has this thing he says, what does he call it, getting ready to exercise programs. So sometimes his whole first thing is like, you're not going to exercise at all right now. You're going to walk for an hour every day, and we're going to work on your food, and in 90 days we're going to talk about getting you in the gym. So there's also, like, depending how out of shape the person is, some people just need to spend 3 months or 6 months just getting ready to start to work out, right? So you can find it. Where's your practice again?
in Portland, Oregon?
Yeah, there must be a ton of good trainers there that are aware of the food part and then could help you coordinate this. And for
Yeah.
someone like, it may be better for her to have someone in person, since you guys are, if you're in the middle of rural Kansas or something, it may be hard to find a gym, but in Portland, I'm sure there's some high-end training gyms that she could find someone and actually go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week and have that kind of experience, you know.
Okay. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm. All right, so now let's say, let's see if I answered Carolyn's question. I think I did, but maybe not. Carolyn, did that answer your question, or is it kind of a little more question there?
I guess people, people are taking all these supplements and spending all these money, and then their tests come back the same or worse sometimes. And I have trouble with knowing really what to say to them because, yes, we work on their lifestyle, but we've also given them all these supplements. And so they're expecting things to change at least somewhat in a positive direction.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say earlier. So let me explain a little more. So I think, well, number one is they have to be feeling better.
Right.
That is assumed in all this, that they're feeling not just a little better, but dramatically better. They have to be
Mhm.
feeling dramatically better. And I think this woman that we just were talking about is feeling significantly better. So we're assuming that's happening. If the labs are the same or worse and they're not feeling better, then there's something critically wrong and then you need to refer out because it's not working, right? So, but let's say that they're feeling dramatically better and then the labs have not changed or even looking worse. Then you get in, it's really this, back to this Eduardo thing. Okay, what are we gonna do here? You can't work 18 or 19 hours a day, 75% of the time in foreign countries and think that this is gonna be okay. So then it comes back to this, like, how are we gonna rein in your lifestyle and really get this dialed in? So in that sense, the lab retests showing that well, first of all, they're feeling better, so they know they're involved and they're still enrolled and they still want to do it because they're feeling better. But the lab then shows you that the lifestyle is far from where it should be. So it's not about, you know what I mean? So then you're using the retest and the lack of progress on the retest to say, look, you just spent, $2,700 on supplements in the last 6 months and it's not working because we got to figure out, I know you're feeling better, but we're just treading water here. We're putting in glutathione and you're burning it up. We're putting in, DHEA and you're burning it up. We're putting in B vitamins and you're so stressed that you're just burning them up. And we're not seeing the improvement that we want on the lab. So we want to keep going with what's making you feel better, which is the supplement program. But really, functional medicine is about lifestyle. So we want to get this next level of improvement. So, you see what I mean? So you're using the retest failure to look better as a way to get leverage over a more intense lifestyle change.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's not, so then you shouldn't feel like the program's failing. It's just the retesting is pointing out what's not working. And it almost always is going to come back to lifestyle. Because if they're feeling better, you're on the right track. If they're not feeling better, then you have a really big problem that's different. You refer out.
Yeah. So in the beginning, how do you frame that? Like when you're saying, okay, let's go for a retest because they're going to be, how do you measure their expectations?
That's a good question. Like I think in the beginning, before you even get to retesting, okay, yeah, this is like a Justin Marchegiani question. So Justin took this class. He was in the first group in 2006. And I learned a lot from him because he took my stuff and just made it so much better. I was really pissed off about that at first. And I thought, no, this is like good. The student becomes the teacher. I was like, so I ended up copying him in later years because he was so smart about taking my stuff and making it better. But one of the things that he did that was really brilliant is that, and this is not unusual, I don't know where he got the idea, but he basically from the very beginning told people consistently, you can't just say this once, you have to say this like 5 to 7 times, that functional medicine is about lifestyle change, and 80% of the success of the program is predicated on them making the lifestyle changes. And so you start with that discussion on the very first time they become a patient, the very first patient visit. And then you say, hey, 20% of this is lab-based, and that 20% comes first because I know you're not in a position right now to go to the gym and work out 3 times a week because you can barely get off to work in the morning, and you're You don't have time for this, or, you know. So in the beginning, a wholesale lifestyle change is almost impossible for most of our patients. They just can't do it. And then you let them know, hey, we're going to start with like one lifestyle change now, and that's doable. This is going to get you to drink water, you know, something simple like that. Let's get you hydrated for these first 3 months and see what that does to your body. So you know, but then if you have a consistent every visit check-in around the lifestyle changes and how successful they are with that, then when you get to the point of retesting, it won't be like the sudden surprise, right? You can let them know, okay, well, the supplement programs have clearly worked. You're feeling better, like with this woman. Your brain fog is mostly gone, but we haven't really changed the markers on the lab yet because of this, you know, extreme stress that you've been under. And frankly, until you can exercise and eat really clean food, we may not see changes here. And so we're going to, in the short term, have to use these supplements to prop you up. And I make my joke, which is kind of corny, but I'll say they, you know, they're supplements, not permanents. You know, we don't want them to be. We don't want you to become dependent on these, and we don't want you to have this ongoing stress unmitigated and be an Eduardo, right, where you're working 18 hours a day in different time zones your whole life. We got to like rein that in. But that's like it's a process to get people to the point where they can see that it really is about lifestyle. Because in the beginning, the supplements should make most people feel so much better that they get that boost, and they then have to decide, oh, can I just keep taking all this adrenal stuff and still be stressed out of my mind at work? Yeah, I can, because they figure out that there's sort of a dependency almost that it's created by the supplements. But we want to break that as soon as we can by letting them know the supplements are really designed to get them to a certain point where they can make the lifestyle changes. But that's like the educational process, but you want to set them up for it in the very beginning.
Okay. Yes.
Does that help? And then it won't be a surprise. And then what I was thinking about with Justin is that he had it so, I think he had people sign something. That's what he did. He had people sign a document that said, I understand that functional medicine is 80% lifestyle changes, and I am committing to do. It was silly. It's like not a legal document anyway, but it was just like something that he could pull out, you know, in a year and say, remember this? You know, you're still eating sugar every night. We just, you know, let's work on this. Let's, you know, but not in a punitive way, in a coaching way, like a really good middle school basketball coach. You know, like the coaches that I've seen, you know, some of them are just assholes and they're yelling at the kids, and you're like, wow, you were just a jerk. You should not be coaching kids. And then some of them are like, they got a bunch of 8th graders and they're really supportive, and they get even the kids that aren't that great can play a little bit, and they're like, you know, get them to be a team, and they get that whole thing. So it's a coaching kind of thing, not a dictatorial relationship, but it's this back and forth kind of. And that can take, you know, like the Eduardo story, that was like a 5 or 6 year journey for him and I to figure out even what he could do on these work trips. You know, it didn't happen overnight. It took a while. But if the person's feeling better consistently, they'll stay with you as you guys, you know, as a team kind of sort this out. I think in my mind, if I look back on my most fun cases, probably half or more of the work is this kind of coaching. You know, these are not chronically ill people, right? These are usually people that are in pretty good shape and are functional and have jobs and whatnot, but really need to get, you know, things reined in lifestyle wise. All right, so let's see here. Let me grab well, there's a bunch of questions that came up. Let me just kind of cover this. Yeah, let me grab Amy first, and then we have Sujanya. Amy, you there? Let's see.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So last week there was a mold question, and I was actually chaperoning a 3rd grade farm field trip, and my daughter was tugging at me and I wasn't able to answer. And I just, if people are interested, if you're interested, I can add a little more.
Yeah, please. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So one of the things that I like to cover is you have to make sure that people aren't still being exposed. So there are different levels of inspectors, and some mold species you can't smell, sometimes you can't see it. And I have had patients, I had this one patient for a year. I said, I think you should get your house tested, because she swore that she didn't have current a current mold exposure. And her ERMI was over 30, which is pretty high. It was under her floorboards and in her walls, so you couldn't smell it, you couldn't see it. So that's one thing to cover, is like, even if you ask patients, are you still in a home that's exposing you, they sometimes will say no, but there's still an exposure. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, oh, and by the way, Elise did a great job of kind of jumping in and answering the question. The other thing is that mold can jack up any body system, so it can mess with the adrenals, with the gut, promote dysbiosis, jack up liver detox pathways, mess with the brain, and so it's always good to treat what you see in the labs, the Dutch, the ion, the GI. Some people who treat mold don't do all those tests, and so they might not see all the ways that, specifically are needed to be treated, like the adrenals, etc. And then the question was about when someone can't tolerate binders. And sometimes when somebody can't tolerate binders, they also can't tolerate a lot of things. So some of these people, like, they can't be around certain smells. They're super sensitive to perfumes and exhaust. And there's other reasons for that too, but that's one thing that mycotoxins can do. And those people are good candidates for the programs like DNRS. And that brings in, the response that Elise had, that was like, sometimes you have to work with their immune system and get them to calm down before they can receive some of your treatments. So those programs that get their, kind of rewire the brain and get them to calm down can be a first step. So just wanted to add that.
Oh, thank you. That is very helpful. And let me see here. Let me just mention one other thing. This is a little, it's really what are we really doing here? Some of you are in the Bay Area. You may know this woman, Marion Rosen. Does anyone know her? Rosen Method Bodywork. There's Marion. I haven't looked at her picture in so long. Look at her. So when I was 23 years old, someone told me about Marion Rosen. So I went and I had a session with her. She was a physical therapist by training. She lived through World War II. She's Jewish. She's all kinds of stories that she had about all that. But she became, over the years doing physical therapy, she realized that she could touch people and release things with them. She's a very gifted healer, extremely gifted healer. And so I was a client of hers for a long time. And then I became a student of hers for a long time as well. She must have died a long time ago. I'm not sure when, but this is when I was 22, 23 years old. This is a long time ago. Anyways, but one of the things that Marion taught me about practice is that she had a ritual that she would do. Before the patient would come in for treatment, she would, and this was just her personal ritual. You can make up your own, obviously. She would go, before the person walked in the room, she would go to the sink, she would wash her hands with soap and water. And it wasn't like her hands were dirty. It was more just like this, like a holy water kind of thing, like someone would use water in a church setting or something like that. It was like this ritual that she had. And then she would sit down and just for like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, she would get her internal energy systems organized, and then the person would walk around the room and she would start her treatment. But when you think about someone like Marion Rosen, you realize that what she was doing wasn't physical therapy. It had nothing to do with physical therapy, even a little bit. She was just a straight up spiritual healer. And so that's just something else to take into mind with what we're doing. Dr. Bill Timmons, Dr. Glenn Frieder, Dr. Richard Lord, every one of my teachers, Lenny Coco, they were all straight up spiritual healers. And so you don't need to talk about this with patients, but there's a subtext or what do you call it? Like this is other dynamic that's happening with people, which is really why they're coming to see you guys. They're coming to see you because their energy systems are not in good shape and their spiritual disconnection is profound. And they look to you consciously or unconsciously to provide that kind of plug into the spiritual world and to healing itself, because that's where all healing takes place. So I just thought I mentioned that with these patients, again, with the labs, they're not any better, really what's going on. You can understand that there's another dynamic, there's another reason why they're coming to see you and why they're feeling better that's sort of beyond just the physiology part, okay? All right, so let's grab Sujanya. Had a question about a patient. there.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
So I have this patient who came in for a painful skin rash to begin with, and of course she had other issues. So I did test her and put her on and found that she was gluten sensitive. The GI map tested for anti-gliadin protein, and put her on adrenal program based on the test, and she got her rash was no longer painful after like just a week of the full adrenal program. And of course she's still improving in all other regards. Like she used to have like this abdominal pain for no reason, and she doesn't have it anymore. She came in for follow-up yesterday and said that since 3 weeks her rash again turned painful, and it started worsening. The things I noted was after taking the history, she was not taking her DHA pregnenolone the timings were like off because of her work, and there was extreme stress at work which she never had recently. Otherwise, and the other thing is, I mean, she's not like she doesn't know if she's photosensitive, but always protects herself from sunlight, but she was not sure if she going out into the heat was making that. So having said that, I mean, those could be the reasons, but I just wanted to see that, I mean, I put on hair, skin, and nails as well in addition to the program. Just wondering, like, if am I doing something wrong, or is there something I need to do, or just like I told her to take her DHA pregnenolone regularly, and I can't do anything about the stress, but asked her to stay away from the heat. But can you share your thoughts? I mean, just like a little confused, like what else can I do here?
Okay, so basically the gluten-free diet and the original adrenal program helped her skin rash quite a bit, and then it started to come back. That's kind of, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple things to think about. One is that sometimes this is the most obvious thing, I would say, or the most common thing, is sometimes when people go gluten-free, they drop out gluten, obviously, but they still have to eat. So they may start to eat more of a different food that they're reacting to. So the classic one would be corn. So like you go gluten-free and you're like, great, I'm gluten-free. So what am I doing? I'm at Whole Foods because shopping for healthy food, and I'm buying corn tortillas and corn chips, and I'm making cornbread, and I'm doing everything corn, corn, corn. And if the person has a corn allergy, then over the course of a few weeks or a few months, that gluten-free high corn diet can start to trigger the skin problem to come back again, or it could be a headache, it could be any kind of food reaction kind of thing, right? So it doesn't have to be a skin problem. It could be that they have migraines, they go gluten-free, the migraines are gone, but now they've eaten enough corn that they're starting to come back. Soy is another potential culprit. Not that corn or soy are necessarily bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just common for people to get healthy to eat certain foods and then to eat too much of them. It could be a food that they've eaten their whole life, but dairy is another obvious one, but they never really ate that much of it. Now all of a sudden they're eating, dairy every day or eggs every day or something like that. So that's one possibility for a skin problem coming back. The other one is that they're having, the gluten thing is working and their gut's getting a little bit better, but deep-seated parasitic infections are coming out to the surface and causing problems. So in some cases like this, well, here I would say it this way: the more that going gluten-free helps, the more likely they are to have a hidden parasite. Giardia, crypto, and ehisto, blasto, those things. And then, if you really are honest about this with yourself, we probably catch 2%, 5% of the parasites that are actually out there. This is really hard for these lab companies, even with the PCR stuff. Almost all the parasitic infections are missed. So this is one way you can see that a parasitic infection expressing is that, without having lab work to prove it, right, is that they go gluten-free for a few weeks, a few months, even as long as a year or two, and they're strictly gluten-free. The gut lining is starting to repair, and these deep-seated infections that are embedded in the gut lining start to come to the surface and trigger different kinds of symptoms. In fact, the more careful they are about being gluten-free, the more likely this, sort of deep-seated parasitic infection problem can start to happen. So that's another possibility. The other possibility is that she's just missing something, like maybe either omega-3 or omega-6 oils can help with the skin, or like you were saying, you can use hair, skin, and nails. You can use extra vitamin A can sometimes help a lot with skin problems. Extra A and extra zinc are kind of commonly used, and a little extra magnesium. So it also could just be a straight up nutrient deficit that it's just kind of expressing.
Okay.
Those would be, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say those are probably the top 3 things I would think about.
So, okay, so if I rule out that she's about the corn and soy, those kind of things, and none of the parasitic infection showed, but I understand that we only catch 2%. So would you recommend like just doing the dysbiosis program because she has a lot of dysbiosis, or because I don't know what parasite she might be having there. So how would I go about that?
Yeah, you can always do just the anti-parasitic herbal program, and that's as a stand-in for a dysbiosis anyways. So those herbs will take care of any dysbiosis problem. So you can definitely do that, and just see what her response is like to the anti-parasitic supplements. But call it a dysbiosis protocol because the overlap is so strong anyhow.
And with the omega-3, omega-6, is there a dose that we look at in this kind of situation? Like she might need higher doses, I guess, right?
Yeah, usually a little higher than normal. So like 2 grams a day of omega-3s is typical. So if you want to just give her 60 or 90 days of a higher dose just to see if it helps the skin, I would just bring it up to 4 grams a day.
Okay.
So 2 grams in the morning, 2 at night, but you don't want to do that for very long. So like 60
Okay.
days, 90 days, see if the skin gets better. Now, a lot of people, I don't know why this is usually women, probably a hormone connection or something, but sometimes omega-6s work really well also for skin problems. So you can also try those.
Okay. Just a question about the discussion about the labs and everything. So I understand how the lifestyle and everything, but with patients who come in for health optimization, who do not want to, I have a patient who everybody in his family lives more than 100 years, but they get demented at 80. So he came in to me because he didn't want to be that kind, and he does like mountain bike marathons. I don't even know all those kind of things. But so in those kind of people, and like how do we so obviously he wants to repeat the labs and see where he's at, and if this situation comes, how is there a way we could put it in?
Great. Put what part in?
So like this particular patient doesn't have any symptoms. All he wanted to do is wanted to get healthy, make sure that there's nothing underlying going on. And of course, we found dysbiosis. He has yeast and all those things. And I'm doing all the programs, and he's committed. But say if I repeat the labs and it doesn't show the improvement in the markers, is there a way that I could explain to him? I know I'm hypothetically speaking here.
Well, yeah. So for someone like that, there's no symptoms at all. Then there's no symptoms, but they're on a preventive program. Then you have to change the lab markers because that's your only marker for improvement. So that's different from the earlier situation we were talking about. So if you get a retest back with someone like that, the only way that you can tell that that program's working for them, because there's no symptoms to measure, is that the labs are improving dramatically. So if they don't improve, bring the case in and we can look at, how to fix that. Because in that case, you have to get really serious about addressing what's not improving, because that's your only guidepost for, the overall. Where most of our patients we're looking for some level of symptomatic improvement and the labs getting better. But in this case, it's really just labs only.
Okay, that's great. One last question, quick one. Walsh protocol for cognitive behavioral disorders and mental health illnesses. Do you recommend that?
What's it called, Walsh?
Walsh protocol. The Walsh Research Institute. The physician, he actually trains MDOs with Walsh protocol, especially for cognitive behavioral disorders like dementia, anxiety, bipolar, everything, like autism and everything.
I'm familiar with that group.
Okay.
But the group, The guy that I know that really well that does all the mental health stuff is Psychiatry Redefined.
Okay.
I don't know anything about Walsh. She may be great, but that's Jim Greenblatt. Let me show you. Let's see. Here we go. Jim Greenblatt, and he has a really people love this course. Psychiatry Redefined. This here.
Okay.
Yeah. And he has a class. I forget how long it lasts, but he has lots of educational information. And he's a huge fan of Richard Lord. He and I kind of there's Jim. He and I kind of have bonded over Richard Lord over the years. But Jim's a really great person. Oh, and then Peter Bongiorno is an amazing naturopath. He's in New York City. But most of this class is done by Dr. Greenblatt. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. I just wanted to share something. I know it always comes up with the weight loss, maybe in the other class, but my patient who came in, she's in 30s, and literally I made her stop the intermittent fasting and exercise and everything until I healed her adrenals. And just 6 weeks back, I said, like, you're ready for your exercise, and she's still eating 3 times a day. Her waist circumference dropped 4 inches in a month.
Oh, that's satisfying. Awesome.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you. That's great. It's so great when people get better like that. Danielle had a question here. Danielle, you there? This is the answer here. DNRS is Dynamic Neural Retraining System. So this is something a lot of doctors use to retrain your brain, basically. Super well done program here. Oh, and then the thyroid information. Yeah, I need to post the thyroid information. Let me make a note on that because I forgot to do that. So I will post the thyroid info in the resources section. And let's see if there's any other questions here. And this, Alexandra had something else to look up here. Let me grab this. Alexandra, are you there? Bob Miller?
Yeah, he had a booth at the TFIM, the functional forum, this spring. And my colleagues were asking him, do you have genomics for dummies? And he's like, no, I don't. And I asked him, are you developing AI? He's like, yep. Because my smart colleague says that he's too heady, his programs. Well, yeah, then I looked up finally again and revisited, and he, I guess back in 2020, he lets you take some free classes, like to sample his program, and his program's like $500 for 27 hours of genomics testing. And I think I might do it because it's a wonderful review, what you've been teaching and what Richard Lord teaches, with everything with the SNPs and what can go wrong with glutathione or with iron and the Fenton reaction and just all these different things, which I actually find very interesting. But anyways, he mentioned also EMF, and that triggered my interest because he was talking about the ONO or the NOx enzyme and antioxidants. There's even an EMF medical conference. Sorry, I'm digressing. There was a lot I discovered on this Memorial Day.
Okay. Yeah, well, I don't know that guy, but do you know his website?
Yeah, his website is Functional Genomic Analysis, and he was using Great Plains in 2020 and hoping that they would integrate so that the SNPs could show up maybe on the test, or the test results would show up in this online program.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I don't know of him yet, but everyone's trying to figure this out. Definitely functional genomics.
Yeah, and he talked about Nathan and Neil Nathan. Wait, am I talking the right person? I'm going to mix up the mold person with the genomic person.
Nathan Morris is Nathan Morris.
Oh, maybe he didn't talk about him. I think he was talking about Neil Nathan. Yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds impressive. I think I'll give it a try. And finally, I've never done genetic analysis and see. He has a.
Yeah, you can send one into the class. You can just submit it in the lab section. We can look at it together.
It sounds really cool, and I think this is the wave of the future. I was just wondering if other people have other companies like it, and because we want to compare and talk about.
Yeah, we can make a list of these. Yeah, go ahead and run it and see. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah. All right, thank you very much. All right, gang, I'm gonna wrap it up for today. Take care, everyone, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye now.